think it's okay.
Awesome. Then before I rush, quick intro. Welcome. Today is December the 8th. It's Friday. And we are here in a funded proposal, actually, from DeepFunding Round 3, where it's about the ideation of DeepFunding token requirements. It's all about developing contribution tokens for DeepFunding. For those who don't know, DeepFunding is SingularityNet's innovation fund on the road to become a DAO, somewhere, ideally. And you're all part of this. The proposal goes through a series of workshops with community and experts. Today, you are in an expert call, which makes you experts. Congrats. And before going further, quick introduction, everybody. Anna, Rarish.
So hi everyone, my name is Anna Maria. I'm half of New Mindflow.
Yeah, Radish, I'm the other half. We have a background in filmmaking, but since early 2021, we've been involved in the Cardano NFT space. And in this call today, particularly, we're representing the NFT Guild and trying to bring some perspectives from the Cardano token and NFT side to this project.
Awesome. Next one is Patrick. Patrick Topola is here.
I just wanted to clean my glasses and then you call me out. It's very unfair. So my name is Patrick. I'm founder of Nmaker. We do tokenization and NFT infrastructure. And yeah, just a quick warning. I only have exactly half an hour. Then I have to jump off. It's very important. And besides that, I don't have much to say, I guess. Not yet.
You would have so much to say. Like, Nmaker is, I think, responsible for a bunch of token and NFT mintings on the Cardano blockchain. You're a little bit the superstar of the blockchain there. You have a bunch of really good insights on the technological side. I think you studied computer science and you are no idea 23 and your first startup Nmaker became an all-star in Cardano. You are nuts and you are a genius. So to add on that. Then next one then would be Nicola.
Hello, nice to meet you all. I'm Nicola Massella. I'm director of the Legal and Compliance Department at Storm Partners. With our firm, we have been assisting SingularityNet and its ecosystem for a bit more than a year now. We have been assisting with the setup of the Swiss Foundation, which is a process that we have been finalizing recently. And now what we are basically working on is a transfer of assets and the implementation of the new legal structure. Within the context of this, actually, there is already a discussion, luckily, with David Lake about actually spinning off DeepFunding and creating a proper DAO, even from a legal point of view. So I'm very happy to participate in the discussion because I think it makes a lot of sense to me. I work with other DAOs as well, 1inch, many others, but I mean, the famous names are few. And I think I could provide value, in particular, if we want to have a discussion a bit on the legal implications of what a DAO means, also in terms of liability of the DAO members. I'm part of a, we could say, lobby / working group here in Switzerland called DAO Swiss that advocates for basically the establishment of more and more DAOs in Switzerland. And a big part of it is about the legal structure of the DAO. We want to protect DAO founders and DAO members from potential liabilities. And the main way of doing this is to incorporate the legal entity and then, of course, to establish a correct legal structure for that legal entity. I'm super open to have a discussion about the fact that having a legal entity makes a DAO not a true DAO, or in some way diminishes the meaning of being a DAO. I don't think so, because we have studied the project, the problem in depth, and we can craft a legal entity in order not to lose its DAO meaning. Let's say it like that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nico. Then we have Joanna, and after Joanna, finally, Jan.
Hi everyone, I'm Joanna. I know
all of you from various parts. Actually, Storm Partners were our legal partner in my old startup, well, my previous startup. So thank you, Nicola, for joining us. Currently, I'm supporting I'm supporting Fotrek as part of their product lead, and Singularity Net and Cardano Circle. So for deep funding, we've won a couple of proposals this round, one of which is this one that I'm supporting, and then helping build out the MVP for their contribution engagement score tool. Yeah, other than that, founded the Cardano Middle East North Africa community. I have a stake pool running on Cardano. I'm an advisor on various projects, more namely a digital securities platform building out of Canada. So yeah, very happy to be here.
Wow, what a wonderful collection of people. I'm impressed, especially also Nicola, that you've been working with David Lake on the Swiss migration and DAO stuff. Yeah, that's real serious stuff. Maybe you know even more than I do about that whole thing. Yeah, DAOs and deep funding has been a discussion from the start. Might go on a little bit. There's also an initiative we're having right now, which is Syncom DAO, we call it. Terrible name. It's about creating a decentralization blueprint for the foundation. So also in that context, this might be a topic. I think for most reasons, deep funding does function quite independently from the rest of the organization. To such an extent that if we have an offsite together and there's an agenda of all the important things that need to be discussed, then I find that deep funding is missing on that, even though it's a really important part of the funding. But I take that as a compliment. I think there are not too many problems. Everything is working as it's supposed to do. We're making great progress, and yeah, people don't have to worry about it too much, except me and Raphael, that is. So Raphael is operations manager of Deep Funding. My name is Jan Horlings. I'm officially have the wonderful title of CPO, Chief Product Officer at Singularity Net. We're still trying to find out what that exactly means. But one thing it does mean is that I'm in the lead of Deep Funding. I started Deep Funding. I don't love the operational stuff that much, so I'm really happy we have Raphael there. But I do love building it out, building a new platform, thinking about the processes, thinking about how we can move ahead. And I think my main job is to try and make myself obsolete in this whole structure of deep funding. So that's what I'm aiming for. Did I forget anything important, Felix? Yeah, lovely Dutch guy. One of the few, yeah. Yep. And what is important for our group as well, I think, in the general, after 1.5 years, now really lots of experiences with Singularity and Foundation, a lot of Web3 entities, they say, bottom-up, grassroots decentralization, very often take it as marketing slogans and buzzwords. Singularity and Foundation actually really does it, really mean it. Means in this regard, there is really a lot of programs and empathy and attention on really making sure that the community is not only participating, but actually is really a decision maker and architect and designer of the whole thing, which includes everybody here, except Jan, because you are Ascent Foundation, no, your community as well. Okay. Then, for today's call, why this group here
Felix,
actually
what about
was
you?
invited?
What about the intro?
Who the fuck are you? Oh, sorry. I'm Felix. I know a bunch of people and projects and help as many as possible when I can. And I'm really good in working with people which are far smarter than myself. That's so right. Then for today's call, Joanna, would you like to what is on the agenda for today?
Sure. Have you guys had the chance to just read the meeting invite? If not, it's okay. I can go through it really quickly. Okay, so I'll just give a really quick brief as well. We had 2 open community workshops and 1 expert workshop prior to this one. The first expert workshop, we mainly discussed, we got some recommendations for some Cardano improvement proposals that we can go through, and then we mainly discussed the viability of going with fungible tokens versus non-fungible tokens. Like discussing off-chain and on-chain data storage, what will be on-chain, what will be off-chain, and then just like self-minting versus distribution, how that would look like, and things like that. And then in the open community workshop, there's a lot of discussions around the philosophy behind token and contribution systems, the incentivization. So rather than individual contributions, but maybe focus on social networks, as well as like just what does it actually mean contribution, what's captured as part of contribution, how do we capture that, how do we represent that, discussions around that. And then through our internal meeting, we are also discussing like, do we mint a single token that captures all this contribution with like metadata about what this contribution is, or do we mint multiple tokens for various different contributions, maybe locking the tokens in a smart contract, what is the role of AI as well. So very big topics in general, but we've made very good progress in kind of ideating around what that would look like. For this specific call, we had a couple questions, maybe from the legal perspective, high level. Nicola, if you have any quick, like on the top of your mind, what are possible regulatory, go ahead, Felix.
One quick topic to add to this, why actually contribution systems and ideally tokens is really to make sure most of the DAO system works on plutocratic voting systems, which means as more assets you hold, as more decision-making power you have. And we ideally want to come to a position where we have a more equal and a more democratic approach. In this regard, DeepFunding developed it since its first funding round early last year, already a contribution score, which is right now an off-chain algorithm, which simply maps specific engagements from community members in the DeepFunding program. And the score is added manually right now to the vote of these wallets in the decision-making process. Then let's say, for example, community members are able to submit proposals, and then the community members vote on the submitted proposals. In this regard, the highest voted proposals will be the ones who receive funding then as well. Ideally, we want to have these tokens in a way that we can add an additional on-chain voting rate actually in this regard, and making sure that maybe not only HRX tokens play a decision-making role and power in the whole system. So it really comes to voting power in this regard, mainly. Further use cases can be explored. We see this as a phased approach. So starting small, building hands-on and practice-based experiences, learning about the thing, and the contribution system will be developed as the thing matures and evolves over time. So in this regard, we want to make sure that we build a non-static system, which is very open to be adapted and further developed along the way.
Yes, perfect. Thank you, Felix. I forgot to give the intro, but yeah, that was great. So do you have any questions before we actually dig deeper into some of the insights that we want to get from you guys?
I don't have any questions. I do have a concern that I always voice when it's about this topic. I'm not sure if this is a right moment to voice that here, or you know what I'm going to say, Felix. Let me just put it right out. So very quickly. I was always a little bit concerned about the privacy part of this. So I don't mind. So contribution scores are very important for multiple reasons, and we can do wonderful things with it. Maybe we can also do bad things with them. I don't know. I think we're often thinking about that from our own perspective, being in a country that we can trust, where we can trust the government, for instance. And where we can trust our freedom. So my question is, if you are in a country that is not friendly or a country that maybe in 10 years isn't that friendly anymore as it is today. How comfortable would you be that all your activity would be on some blockchain somewhere? And I know that this is all hidden behind some wallet address, which is abstract, but I don't think that always will be sufficient reassurance for any bad actor not finding out your proper identity. So my problem is what is also on the basis of GDPR, the right to be forgotten. I think it would be great if I would be in charge of my own data, and at least to that extent that I can always decide to have everything removed. And of course, as we all know, that's a little bit of a challenge when everything is on the blockchain. So that's my concern. I don't have a crystallized opinion on should we tokenize, should we not. I'm still thinking about that, or having maybe I parked it somewhere in my mind. So I'm not against tokenizing. I'm also not in favor of tokenizing. I am in favor of some kind of collection of contribution score. I think the more sources we have for contribution, the better it is. If we have a single source, then it can be gamed and it can be not realistic. If you have 100 sources, it's much harder to game, and the chances that it will go off in a completely wrong direction for some people is also smaller. So I believe in all that. I think that's a good thing. But the privacy and endurance of that data is a little bit of a concern to me.
If I can follow up on this, John, so I agree with you. It's something like from a personal point of view also quite concerning for me. But I think that there are some solutions that would enable us to both protect privacy, but also following up on what Felix was saying, to avoid this super plutocratic approach in which simply if a huge whale owns a massive amount of token, then their proposals will be approved always and surely. And I'm referring in particular to zero-knowledge solutions, zero-knowledge KYC, zero-knowledge identity. We could, there are many providers, we are even working with some, and we could explore different solutions. And my idea is that from a personal data point of view, nobody should ever share their personal data with us. But through these kind of solutions, we should be able to identify a user through an NFT, for instance, and to attribute to them a score. And for this process all to work without even having the need of knowing the identity of this person.
Yes, but would we need to know the wallet address of that person?
Yes.
Well, and that is where my concern is.
Well, Jean, but is a form of, like, they call it in the most technical sense, pseudo-anonymity. So you are not anonymous because in the end you are identified by something, but on the other side, the wallet address is an alphanumerical code that does not contain your name or any other personal information. Now, if in the future governments will be able to put their hands on these codes, I don't know. Honestly, like,
easy. If we have contribution scores with actual activities being related to that and to a wallet address, and I'm not sure what would be behind that zero proof of knowledge. But if you could, for instance, track what activity a certain what awards a certain wallet has received for activity, well, with a little bit of research and analysis, I think you might be able to pinpoint the person behind it. Now, I also don't want to overemphasize this, because I know we're all, every day, leaving digital traces everywhere. So there's no such thing as absolute privacy. But still, if the only thing between my complete track record of everything that I did within a certain context and my identity is that wallet address, if that one wallet address, if you are managing to get that one wallet address, then suddenly this whole lake of data will be opened for you. I don't think that's a particularly good situation.
Maybe Patrick, go first, please.
Okay, I'll try. Yeah, so I think the idea of having like a standardized way to track your contributions is really like powerful, right? Because that's basically how many of those like Web2 platforms work, like Uber or eBay. They're basically like a monopolization of a trust score, right? So on eBay, for example, if you do a successful sale, you get points, and then other people know, okay, this person has a lot of points, so I'm probably gonna get my goods when I buy something from them. So that's really important. And the way it works is basically right by having someone else leave some information about you on your account. So that's all very centralized and it's all very publicly visible. But what we could do is, and I don't think there's any need for blockchain here, but what we could do is we could basically say, okay, if I have a wallet and I have my KYC and my DIT and everything connected to that, I can basically write like a recommendation for a person and I can give that to this person, and then this person has a signature for me where he can prove, okay, this is coming from an actual human. And he can then, when he wants to apply for funding or when he wants to do something on some service, just say, okay, now I'm giving this service access to this information, and then the service can do whatever they want with that. There's no real point in having any of this on chain, I think. I think on chain is maybe relevant for like for saving the proofs or something like that, or for making sure that you can't just delete, bad recommendations or something like that. But I think keeping everything off chain, like that's how digital identity works currently, and that's how it makes sense.
I actually agree on this. I think the on-chain part should be even if be very abstract, but should not include any real data, because, for example, also in the last call we discussed, I definitely want to avoid the surveillance states where anybody has the full access to everything actually in this regard. So when there's anything on-chain, then a very abstract, let's say, summary of actually, okay, it happened there, but not really providing a lot of information. The most important part would be really off-chain. In this regard, what would be really interesting as well to think about who owns the data actually. Let's say, for example, I am in the contribution system and I say, I don't like SingularityNet anymore. I want to get out there and I want to take all my data with me. It should be easy and simple and feasible for each individual to actually 2 clicks and all your data is out. Which means then actually how much data should actually and which kind of data should actually be owned by the system and by the individual themselves. Where we really went to the direction, ideally, the contributor as individual owns the most part of the data on their own devices, on their own whatnot actually in this regard. And the system can't even, let's say, for example, kick out the contributor or ask for data what the individual don't want to submit to the system actually in this regard. So from this perspective, really, off-chain part would be far more relevant. And if on-chain part comes into play, like then very high level, very abstract, but not really on the, let's say, it's not the most important part actually.
Cool. Yeah, I think we all agree. Maybe just to add to what you were saying on the system, might be interesting to see how we see, me and Joanna see our reputation system evolve. The way we're building it right now, we'll have to see how that will go out. So we're starting to make something for DeepFunding, but in concept, it's much more abstract like that. You would have a middle layer where you can make calculations, etc. You would have source data that comes in, and you would have output. So from the same source data, you could have multiple outputs based on what actually you are searching for, what kind of reputation you want. And so even that can be within, for instance, DeepFunding, that can already be different based on different use cases. So if we move that along, what the idea has been from the start is that we can have more source data that are not related to DeepFunding. We could have source data that is related to Cardano or Catalyst or another platform or whatever. And then we could also have output data that is different. And I could have output data of DeepFunding as input for Cardano, for instance. So if we give somebody in DeepFunding a very high reputation score because it's a great person doing a lot of contributions, then if that person would be new in the Cardano Catalyst system, he could already get some credits for having such a good reputation in us. And that is the way we would ideally see this reputation become fluid across platforms. And yeah, how we would want to tokenize that and where we would want to store that. Yeah, I would love to have a really in-depth architecture and deep thinking on that so that we can scale that out to anybody who would like that. So the idea would be if you would use such a platform, you could just use it for yourself and be completely independent. So ideally, that infrastructure would be as decentralized as possible, so that anybody can choose, just so like our decentralized AI platform is, to just use that for their own use case, or use it and in combination with other people. So just giving you that ideal vision here.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Jan. It's very relevant. And the more we talk about it, the more I think the database structure should become a knowledge graph and not the normal ERP system that we have. But anyway, and this ties into, like, the more I hear everyone speak about owning the data, maybe we should consider that, and I'm not sure exactly how that would be structured, but verifiable credentials, because that's something that automatically you can issue. And then, bye Patrick, thank you. That you can issue from yourself and then retract. So then the question would be, how can we have different types of contribution scores or different types of contribution maybe be their own verifiable credentials, and then every system that we want to interact with, we can just issue that VC and then retract it. That way we actually own that contribution. That could be a path that we consider, because I think that's the closest to self-sovereign identity solutions that we have in this space. And a verifiable credential can be anything. It could be your educational certificate, or it could be a representation of something. So if a system can work with that and they can accept the VC as a contribution, then that could be a way of identifying your influence in something. So I think this is out of scope for this, but maybe it's something we can consider with more experts in the DID space.
But just to validate, in your proposal, who would control someone's contribution score or data?
In what proposal, sorry?
So in what you were just describing, who is the owner of my contribution data?
So this is the question, like right now, if we were to discuss it with the system that we're building, this knowledge graph, for example, that outputs these scores, maybe the output could be a verifiable credential that is issued by this platform, but then verified as well by the other platforms that the data sources are coming from. Maybe I'm speaking high level, and then that could live in my wallet, and then I could also issue it to anyone else if it works.
Yeah, so every platform could function as an oracle, and that oracle could have a data feed that is accepted, and when it comes from that endpoint, then we trust it, something like that. And you could have multiple different trust levels for different platforms. So I always say Truth Social for me would have a very low confidence, but some other platforms might have a higher confidence level. But this also, if we want to move into a philosophical domain here, I'm not sure if you want to use the time for this, but opens up very interesting discussions. So first of all, the question, who owns the data? So if there would be a new platform and they would like to have a good start, and they would like to have 1,000 people with a high reputation. And for DeepFunding, I know in our data system, we have that 1,000 people with a good reputation. Yeah, who will they pay? Will they pay the individuals for coming to their platform? Will they pay the platform for opening up and enabling sharing? I think it's probably both in some kind of division, but that already, there are a lot of complexities there. And now another question. would I be allowed? So if this, let's say that the contribution data would be my data. So I've done a lot of things on our platform, and that's covered, tracked in the knowledge graph, and then we can do some kind of analysis and scoring on that based on our current use case. What am I allowed and not allowed to do with that data? So the first question is, can I just delete everything? I think a lot of people would say, yes, you're allowed to do that. Now, the question is, am I allowed to delete only parts of it? And then let's cut that down in different scenarios. So one scenario is, everything before I was 20, I was foolish and full of hormones. Please delete that stuff. I don't want that to interfere with my political career. I don't know. Well, reasonable, right? Now, the next step would be, what if I start to prune my data and all the things where I behave badly, I will take that out. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Mm.
If I may provide some feedback over these questions, do you want to go first, Maria, and first?
Sorry, I didn't get your question.
No, I was about to
No,
answer,
he was
but
asking us if we want to go first.
because
no,
I noticed that they
something-
raised hand.
Or
Yeah.
that you just thought of, you can go.
Okay, thank you. So, from a legal point of view, to answer your first question, so who is the owner of this data? I think it's very important to answer that question in general with respect to all the activities of DeepFunding itself. And this is why we need a legal entity that is identifiable as the entity that runs basically DeepFunding. Now, how the governance of that entity works, this is really the point. And the governance of that entity works as a DAO. So all the other questions you pose, like, can we delete, can we not? My answer would be, we can do whatever is approved by the DAO. So theoretically, if you do a proposal to the DAO saying we should scrape all the data that we have and the DAO approves, then you scrape the data. Now, how this is implemented, that's a bit of another topic, because a lot of DAO decisions are self-implemented, in particular when it comes to funding. The DAO approves that the self-contract deploys the fund. But when it comes to the data, either we design a smart contract that can, with a kill switch that would actually delete all these, or there needs to be some delegated person. Now, with most of the DAOs we work with, actually we go with the delegated person, because as much as we would like to have a fully decentralized, automated organization, in the end, the human hand is still necessary to do a lot of things. So the important is to acknowledge that and to have a system in which even these people that are delegated are overseen and legally bounded to adhere the basically to the decision taken by the DAO.
Yeah.
So they cannot do whatever they want.
Yeah, so the issue I see here potentially is, if the DAO can decide what can be done with the data, then basically the data is owned by the DAO, which means that it is not mine. Which means that if I say I want to delete all my data and the DAO says, no, it's ours, you can't delete it, then I have a problem.
Well, it depends, because if so from the beginning, we will establish some terms and conditions about you providing the data and how the data are used by the DAO. And from the beginning, we can put in these legal terms that you have the right to obtain cancellation of the data whenever you want with a certain procedure.
So there's
Right.
over some, so we will define the ownership at the beginning, and we will also define the beginning and the end of the ownership responsibilities of the DAO.
Yeah.
And maybe those
And-
conditions that you mentioned, Jan, like, okay, maybe right off the bat, you can delete anything that's before you were 20, but then if you want to prune all of this data, that's something that needs to be approved by the DAO or things like that.
Yeah. And the idea is that the moment in which you draft all of these things is when really you draft the DAO governance framework. So how the voting works, what kind of decisions can be taken, how. and all of this, and you really create the kind of, like, we call it legal architecture of the DAO, because it's really the building that from a legal point of view sustains the DAO.
It's wonderful, Nicola, to have you here and have that legal perspective on this whole thing, because I think that's a very important foundation. We can build a wonderful framework, but if we don't have that foundation below it, it might be built on sand. So it's very good to have that in there from the beginning. So thank you.
Yeah, and it
Thank
ties
you.
very well to the work, kind of like now that, because we're thinking about if we want to create this knowledge graph for the reputation system, who will own this knowledge graph? Then maybe it's a DAO that owns this knowledge graph, and then the knowledge graph is what outputs the contribution scores that could be represented as verifiable credentials or tokens or whatnot, and then the DAO also can govern how that works and whatnot.
The question that comes to my mind right now, if we are always talking about the same DAO, so we have maybe DeepFunding as a DAO, but maybe you want to have a separate DAO to be in charge of this whole reputation thing.
Yeah, especially if you want to open it up to other communities.
Yeah.
Sorry, Felix.
Yeah, Anna Raros, go first, please. You had a hands up before.
So obviously this data ownership discussion extends far beyond the contribution system, but at least for the contribution system, we've considered this topic before, and our best thought was that basically we would make it so that there is no data to own. So everything that you do is recorded and stored locally on the devices you interact from. And at the end of each funding cycle, that gets abstracted into a score and maybe further abstracted through a token that is on the Cardano blockchain after that. And that token then gets calculated for your voting weight in Singularity. It's still uncertain how this could be, but of course it could be then incorporated into other systems. So that reputation, those tokens, for instance, can carry, like you said, Jan, a certain weight in Catalyst, for instance, and maybe augment your voting power or your other decision-making capabilities in other systems. But we don't store any of the data relating to individual contributions. The only thing that is in a way trackable is the fact that you've contributed to SingularityNet from an outside entity's perspective, right? Like you were thinking about nation states, for instance, tracking.
Yeah, but at the okay. So that would, from a safety perspective, that would help if you can abstract that all away. So there are two things there. First of all, on a very high level, you will still have Jan reputation score 8 out of 10. Let's be optimistic here. And that represents some value. If I have 1 million people and I have their reputation scores in a certain context, that is valuable. So it's still a question who owns that data. The other part of it is if you abstract everything away, then you will also lose a lot of future possibilities with this data. So one reason for putting everything in a knowledge graph is that we can have one set of data, but we can answer very different things with it. So today I want to have a selection of 5 people that are both knowledgeable about blockchain and have showed through their action that they are reliable. I don't know, whatever. And tomorrow I want to have somebody that has shown a lot of social interaction and thereby shows that he's a very empathic person, and I want to have a rating for empathy. So if we would share, we would store, and this is maybe also against the privacy thing, but if we would store all those interactions with some level of granular, maybe not to the most granular, but with some metadata, for instance, on a large knowledge graph, then yeah, that would be very, very flexible to use in very different use cases. So if you're abstracting all that away and you only take out a number, then yeah, you lose a lot of the power of that data.
Yeah, Jan already told my point. The point I would make, it's good to have granularity as well in these tasks, because for instance, we are implementing the marketing circle, right? Which is a group of decentralized group of members of the community. And we want to have, for instance, the knowledge about if they are good with editing videos and etc. So that's something that we really, a part of knowledge graphs, that's something that we really want to have in order to pick people like, I need to do this, so you and you have good scores, and we want to invite you to do this work. So I understand the general score would be nice to have as well, of course, but we lose something else unless we start to define in a more high level, like marketing things, and not specifically what was done, but still we are going to lose some capabilities in this system.
Yeah, so this relates to you have different outputs based on the same input. And I always use the example that for if we want to give people a reward for what they did in the past round, their contributions, we'll look at the previous round. If we want to measure somebody's voting weight, there's no reason to restrict that to the last round. We want to look at longer periods. So we're using basically the same data set, but we're already using it different for paying rewards and for determining voting weights. Now, what Raphael says, maybe at some point we also want to use it for which community members are very good in a certain task. And then you would need to have more granular data, which I think if we would store it in a knowledge graph would not be so bad, as long as I, as a person, would at least have the idea, have the opportunity to remove all of that if I don't want it anymore. So I would like to have that opportunity. I'll leave it first to Felix.
I think what is really important to think about actually as well is like what tools would be actually used. When you look, for example, on contribution systems, for example, what I like is what we experimented a lot with Swarm is this task-based engagements actually, right? You use, for example, DWORK or GitHub project boards or Kanban boards actually, where you have contributions and everything translated in tasks actually. They can be as granular as you want, and whatnot. The most important part is actually what is the structure of the data actually in this regard. For example, for our case, it's really important that, okay, cool, we have CSV files, for example, in this regard, right? And actually to say, okay, like what is already the relation between the tool which is used and the individual which engages with the tool? You can say, oh, okay, if the tool captures a rather abstract, let's say, fingerprint or a summary of what the individual actually does, and the individual holds the very much, let's say, in-depth, let's say, data of all his contributions, then the system itself doesn't have to know that much, because there it's not about the quantity of the data, but the quality, that you have a very clear structure of what exactly is needed actually. You need a timestamp. You need a certain category. You need certain tags. And only this is sufficient already to provide, oh, okay, there has been a high quality contribution without telling actually too much about what exactly happened. The most important part there is then as well contributor and verifier. Who verifies a contribution? This is coming a little bit back what Patrick mentioned before as well. There's different roles. And I can say, oh, I contributed this, all the stuff. And I start to hack the shit out of my own data sets and said, I'm a superhero. Look, all of my stuff I did. As long as you don't have the verifier, it doesn't matter, right? And in this regard, and as well, actually, in this regard, only verified data now is fed into the system actually in this regard, which brings actually also another hurdle. Because moving this all into the part what Nicola mentioned, like, because this is crucial, actually the legal setup for the thing. because we can do a lot of stuff, only just without thinking about, oh, okay, how this is actually applies to legal or regulative frameworks or whatnot. And Nicola, I know as Storm Partners is very much focused on Switzerland. And I know that the process of setting up anything in Switzerland, you have to go through FINMA, you have to go through the letter for non-action. It takes minimum 6 months. It takes shitload of budget. It's quite expensive and a quite heavy trip.
It's very, Felix, if I may interject there, for this very reason, actually, although we are based in Switzerland, we work with many different jurisdictions. Well, first, my team, we are mostly Swiss and or European lawyers, but then actually we work with many offshore jurisdictions as well. And when it comes to DAO specifically, we have contributed to writing the Decentralized Autonomous Organization Act of the Marshall Islands, which is a very interesting piece of legislation for DAOs because it allows algorithmic DAOs to incorporate as a specific legal form that is called DAO LLC. And the governance structure is pure on-chain, basically.
From your perspective, because also this proposal was submitted in ideation in the last DeepFunding round, and ideally the ideation pool was for projects who come up with a rough idea and say, we don't have the full design, we don't have the full framework yet. We want to do some initial research, which is later translated in a follow-up proposal to actually then really further develop the thing. When you think about this, Nicola, from your perspective, what can be experimented already without too much concern about legal or regulative aspects? And when is it important to really say, wait, guys, there's a hard limit of this you should not do at all before setting something up on the legal side, actually? Because we want to experiment, but ideally we want to build stuff which is long lasting and which is not breaking apart because we just didn't thought about it, right?
It's a tricky question. Simply it's difficult to answer, but I'll try. So the point is this, that in my view, and trust me, it's not only my view, because we have been discussing this a lot with other lawyers that are expert in the field. Basically, every DAO, in our opinion, should be incorporated, because if it's not incorporated, still a court of law could basically qualify this as a simple partnership with unlimited liability for all the members of the DAO. So we believe that incorporating the DAO as a legal entity is a first step, and the earlier it happens, the better it is, ideally at foundation. Now, to answer really your question more like precisely, the thing that I would never do is maybe to issue a token, for instance, like to issue a new token. That would be dangerous, in particular done in this way. And also with regard to the
why is it dangerous to issue a new token?
Well, no, it's not dangerous to issue a new token. It's dangerous to issue a new token without a legal entity.
Ah, okay.
Sorry,
and then the other thing I wouldn't do before like creating the legal structure is basically to launch very, let's say, to establish a new governance framework. This I would do in parallel with also the legal structure. But I think, Felix, that one thing you said makes a lot of sense to me. So with Cardano, we are advising Cardano specifically on the proposal, how is it called? CIP 1694, if I remember correct.
Yeah, 1694.
Yeah, and they are doing a lot. I really appreciate how Cardano community moves. They are super transparent towards the community. They discuss a lot and so on. It's also very slow. Like there are pros and cons in this approach, huh? But in terms of the legal side of it, they have been started working with lawyers quite from the beginning about how to translate this nice structure that the community is discussing into something that is feasible from a legal point of view. Also because if the community discussed for 3 months about something that is not even possible to implement from a legal point of view, it's a huge loss of time for everybody and creates zero value for the project itself. So the idea, in my opinion, would be to, let's say, learn from the experience of Cardano and from the beginning structure these in a way in which there is also kind of a legal backing for what we propose. And I think it's very possible, honestly. It's actually something that's even exciting for my team because we have been working on a lot of DAO governance structures lately, and we are getting a quite good expertise in these. So in my opinion, we should propose, like I don't understand, maybe I'm not sure I got it correctly, but you said there was a kind of like preliminary proposal in DeepFunding about kind of like exploring this new path. I think that's great. I think that this is a very nice first step, and we should continue like in this way. So there is more like, maybe there is a delegated group, a committee, something like this group that elaborates a proposal with also, let's say, some support to make the proposal very tangible also from a legal point of view. And then at some point, we propose everything to the DAO, or maybe we propose to the DAO the various like things cut in pieces. We don't need to go there with a bunch of things altogether. But my idea would be, and this is basically what we will do also for 1inch, that at some point we will ask the DAO, okay, guys, do you want to incorporate? This will be our legal entity. This will be our governance structure. Let's open a discussion here. And I also very much appreciate the fact that the discussion is not just a yes or no. Is, well, in this governance structure, there are things that I like, there are other things I don't like. So please take my input into consideration, and maybe the governance structure that we will propose to the DAO will be even, I would love, honestly, if the governance structure we propose to the DAO is not even the final one, and the DAO community is able to give prompts, suggestions, comments that will make us modify that structure, and we arrive to a point in which the rules are really decided and created through the discussion with our community.
So you're on the right track, Felix.
And actually, a question then for this, Nicola. If we would plan for a follow-up proposal, would Storm partners be interested in maybe becoming a co-proposer and helping with legal things and stuff?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I can even send a link of other proposals that we did, for instance, the one for 1inch. But I mean, of course, in this case, we will do one tailor-made. Yes, absolutely. Let's do it this way. Also, because this is the only way in which we can do it. Because I mean, I have a mandate from Singularity Net Foundation, but here the client would not be Singularity Net Foundation. The real point is that I want the DAO will be my client. I will be mandated by the DAO to conduct this legal assessment and also to create this legal structure. And this is the way we are working with many DAOs, including 1inch DAO. And that's actually very innovative for us as well. But I think it's a very strong point to really defend the DAO interest, because then I have a legal obligation to basically act for the benefit of the DAO and all its members.
Then I think we will definitely come back to you on this one. Maybe we can't. I know the rates of Storm. I know your prices. Maybe we won't be able to cover all these prices. I think LarryNet and DeepFunding, it's quite honest with its budgets, but
let's discuss that later, honestly, both because we are interested in doing this ourselves, and also because we have a mandate with Singularity Net, so maybe Singularity Net could cover part of the fees, or let's see. I don't see that as a major problem.
And also, we are coming to the end of the call. How does the current direction feel for everybody?
Maybe Felix, you can speak a little bit of what direction that is, just so we're all aligned.
I think especially the part really of thinking about the legal setup first. We're looking what can we actually do before and what shouldn't we do? Like Nicola mentioned, okay, you can do a bunch of stuff, but don't set up a framework, maybe on governance yet, or at least do it in parallel to the legal process of setting up a DAO. And don't mint a token, the fuck, you can break your neck. And maybe looking then already on, okay, like taking more the legal branch of the thing. What so far we mostly covered technical parts. We captured more like community-driven parts. And now this whole legal side, I think this is something really important to figure out actually, and maybe to empathize and focus on first before we go into all the other things. And making at least sure we think about it rather too early than too late. Or do you think, no, the legal part might not be a concern?
If I may, I think it's important to have a good understanding of the legal part. But there are different moving parts here, and I would certainly not stop doing other stuff because we want to sort out the legal part first. So when we're talking about a reputation system, yeah, let's drive forward. There's so much work there to do. And yeah, worst case scenario, we have to trace back or pivot or whatever at some point, but no reason to stop. Where governance is concerned, well, there are some questions at this moment about the legal status of DeepFunding, and since this is recorded, I will be very superficial about that. But yeah, we are working on governance, basically. I'm working on governance every day. Right now, we are scaling out our operational team towards the community. So instead of hiring a larger team, we create a framework for the community to do all kinds of operational tasks for us. So that's also governance. So I'm not stopping that. Another thing of governance is that, well, I think originally my mandate for DeepFunding was to make sure that the community could vote on proposals. But I took that a step further by saying, well, also the governance of DeepFunding should be part of the community, should be driven by the community. Also always made sure that there's a process, that is not something I'm just doing today here, good luck. That wouldn't work. So it's a very careful journey, actually, going from centralized to full decentralized. So yeah, we're going there step by step, involving the community and trying to give away more and more decision power. So also that should continue. And I totally agree with Nicola that we need to have some kind of legal wrapper. So if we would want to separate DeepFunding and see it completely separated, then we would need some kind of other legal wrapper for that. That's absolutely clear to me. Because as Nicola is saying, otherwise every DAO member, everybody who votes would have personal liability to the outcomes of that vote. So yeah, I think I was at the beginning, so this is a nice full circle. At the beginning I was saying we have all these pieces floating together in the right direction. And I think these are three of those pieces. We have reputation system, legal underpinning, and maybe also a legal entity around that. And the reputation system is one of them. So yeah, let's make sure that they all move slowly, step by step, move towards the same point somewhere.
Do I would think some last facts. Anna, Raresh, you have hands up.
Before we wrap up, we had another question for Jan. Of course, a lot of things can be, like we saw throughout today's discussion and throughout the other workshops, attached or tied to the contribution score, but initially the scope of it was to augment your voting power in Singularity Net and DeepFunding. And one of the initial thoughts we had was to not only collect contributions as they relate to DeepFunding, but from the wider Singularity Net ecosystem. So my question was, what do you think would make sense? What other data points could we initially collect from the wider ecosystem that would have a say, would have value in your voting power? And
Jean, I'm sorry to
That's a tough one. So first of all, what we're collecting now are simple interaction on the DeepFunding platform. Somebody gives a comment, somebody gives a thumbs up, somebody gives a rating. All these things can be collected. I was also at the beginning, I started, the more data points we have, the better it is. So another thing that I would like to add there at some point, which is a health concrete idea, is to have what I call a wallet reputation, where we see what the interactions are with somebody wallet, when he did vote or she, whether there are some suspicious behavior in buying a lot of token before a token round and selling off. All those kind of things you could factor in some kind of a reputation score. Other thing would be, and I'm still talking about DeepFunding, not the ecosystem yet, is being in meetings like this one. That also counts for something. So that could also give you extra weight when voting. Maybe being active in our operational circles and doing work that might also give you some extra voting weight. Now, if and whether I would like to expand that to, for instance, Singularity DAO, I think not, to be honest. Because voting, our community is voting with the AGIX token. So I think that should also, voting weight should also be centered around AGIX. That's my first thought right now. But while I'm saying this, I'm immediately thinking, I'm not certain yet, to be honest. I'm not certain yet. I can imagine that if somebody is really a good community member in UNet, yeah, we might factor in that a little bit and give them a little bit of extra voting weight on DeepFunding. It might be. So I think there are three levels here. There's DeepFunding and voting for proposals. There is the governance of SingularityNet and what we do and don't do in SingularityNet. And there's the wider ecosystem. And yeah, so I would say it also depends on the topic. So if it's a topic that would be of meaning for the whole ecosystem, then by all means it would also make sense to have the whole. So suppose that tomorrow you want to launch a new website on the whole ecosystem, and we want to have a budget for that, and we want to make some kind of voting or whatever. Yeah, I think at that point it would make sense to have the whole ecosystem involved in voting. If tomorrow we want to do something in SingularityNet, like hire whatever, a new HR person, I don't see any reason why Singularity DAO should have voting weight on that. So, and this comes to some way, this comes back to that whole knowledge graph thing. So if you have all those interaction with some granularity or some metadata in a knowledge graph, then it's easier to define what kind of context you are looking for and which kinds of data points are then interesting for that output.
I'm sorry, but I unfortunately need to go because I have another call and I'm a bit over time. Just as a closing remark, I want to follow up on what Dan was saying. I agree. You should not stop working and figuring out what you're doing right now. I don't think that the purpose of, contrary to many other lawyers, I don't think that the purpose of legal is to stop things or to put barriers or obstacles. It's actually to make situations better, to protect the rights of the people involved and so on. I think, Jean, that we and I'm more than available for a one-to-one meeting even next week, discuss about this legal wrapper, because that part is the only one that I see kind of like maybe not, or maybe urgent is not the right word, but it's like the quicker we set it up, the better it is for everyone involved in the DAO itself. So I think that conversation is one that can move forward, and in the meantime, move forward with the conversation about the credit system and about the governance itself, because in any case, the governance can be updated, and it's very important that the governance is shared by the community, because what I've seen working with many DAOs, and I think they all have the same problem, is that the community does not participate enough, and the community simply kind of like a bit forgets about it. And in my opinion, the way for this not to happen, I mean, there are of course a lot of factors that influence that, but some factors are like the interest of in what the DAO does, but also the interest and the perception about our role and the value contribution we have in the DAO. So if the governance structure is a governance structure that enhances like participation, contributions, and a meaningful role of the participants, then these participants will actively participate. Otherwise, not really. Or at least this is what we are seeing.
Yeah, well, thanks for the invite. I would love to have a follow-up discussion with you on the topic of potential legal wrappers. So let's make that appointment for next week.
Sure, I'll shoot you an email. And in any case, I don't know how often do you have these sort of meetings, but happy to be in next one if I can, and also to help you move this thing forward.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nicola.
Yep.
Bye,
Thanks
guys.
for being here.
Bye.
Yeah, I also have to jump at least in a couple of minutes. So let's see if we can wrap this up. So yeah, Anna Maria and Raras, I'm not sure if I answered your question adequately.
It was in the right direction. So we were not thinking about votes in other parts of the ecosystem, but strictly deep funding votes. And initially, when we thought about this, we were thinking that if, for instance, someone deploys an AI agent on SingularityNet that adds a lot of value to SingularityNet as a whole, that should also be counted as a contribution, which then in turn has a value in voting weight on deep funding. So those were kind of our initial thoughts in that direction, more than simply as a community member in other parts of
Yeah, so in a sense, we're doing that in a very indirect way. We have something that we call peer reviews from the proposals, and there we let the awarded teams give their opinion on proposals, and it's purely advisory, but it has the same feel about it as what you're suggesting right now. So yeah, I can imagine that if we would have a platform with 20,000 services on there, it would make some sense to have providers of successful services have some say in what other useful services would be for the platform. So we're doing that now very informally and advisory. So if we are a level up in our maturity, yeah. I would argue at some point you could argue if having AGIX is even a requirement, or the only requirement. It could be just a source of voting weight, but maybe not the ultimate one. So now you have to have AGIX, and all the rest is to influence the weight of your AGIX. But I can imagine maybe at some point, if people are really showing a lot of value and engagement towards beneficial AI, that in itself would be enough if we can measure that somehow, and not the fact how much actually having AGIX is a very poor metric, but it's the best we have at the moment.
I think it's the issue with most other crypto projects, and this is something I voice a lot in the Cardano community, because I represent like the MENA region and those other like less developed countries, and I always say we don't even have access to tokens, but we do have the brain power to contribute and build things, but there's no way we could actually buy. And that was my old startup, is to facilitate buying crypto with cash or mobile money or these like digital means of like money. But we're still so far from that. So it's important to keep that in mind if we want to build a more inclusive, system.
Yeah.
Another feature to this wave is something that I already discussed with Jan, actually, and discussed with me, which is about the time that you have done something or engaged or contributed, right? Because if you contributed 10 years ago, it should have the same weight that someone that contributed this year, for instance, or it should have a decrease in the weight of your social tokens or the reputation. That's something that we should consider as well.
Yeah, that's already baked in, I think. And again, that could also differ per use case. Maybe sometimes for some specific things, you want to value those old interactions very high for some reason. And in other cases, you want to have them less high. So yeah, that makes it interesting.
And that's it. Yeah, far over time already. Thanks a lot for still sticking around. This was once again a really good workshop. So far from each workshop, we really learned a lot. And so far it has been actually a beautiful road. So on that, thanks a lot already, everybody, for taking the time. Also, Patrick and Nico, you're not here anymore, but thanks a lot for being here anyway. And
I never want
definitely...
these calls to end.
Sorry?
I never want these calls to end.
Good things have to end as well. That's the beautiful thing. Like, if imagine it would go for eternity, would you still appreciate it? Like the old topic already with the Greek gods and the humans.
I'm just
Yep.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. See you.
See you later.
Yeah.
Great weekend. And
Yes.
thanks for organizing, Felix. Great work.
No. That wasn't only me here. Joanna, Anna, Rarish, there in the proposal team.
Oh, I didn't quite get that. Okay, well, all the more wonderful. Great to be here together with you.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Yeah. Congratulations on the organization. It went from a long trip since we discussed this 5-6 months ago, right, Felix? We started, I'm not sure if we started, but I discussed this reputation system and social token with you a long time ago, and it's amazing to see where we are at this point. Yes.
And
yeah,
also,
maybe one point of a thing to mention here, just to mention it here, is about 2 months ago, also Ben in our organization started raising that reputation thing again, and he had this initiative and also wanted to create a design which is multi-chain with all the math in there that they once thought about, etc. So that is as many things, because we have so many initiatives and ideas and only so many people. That is now somewhere unclear what will be the next step and who is driving that. But I noticed there are a lot of things happening at this moment. So there's this internal thing, there's our RFP, Joanna, then there's this initiative, maybe there are others even. But I think it's all good. It's all good to have that from different perspectives, and let's make sure that it's all ultimately connected and leads to something that is consolidated. That we don't have 5 solutions, different solutions in the end.
And on this note as well, then all the workshops so far, we started to document them already. We will further work out on the documentation there, making sure it's all publicly available as well. And this proposal is very close to closing out already. After this closed out, another one will kick in, the reputation focus group with Dominic Tillman, which will be a natural evolution of this one already. So everything what was discussed through these workshops here and is already very closely tied to reputation, then finds its follow-up there. And then ideally maybe in some more concrete proposals in the next DeepFunding round. else, but definitely there's good stuff to come, and definitely more workshops to be held and more insights to be gained and shared.
Good.
All right, gotta jump, people. Thanks so much, and see you next time.
Pleasure,
Ciao.
everyone.